Hey folks, this is Paul. And we're talking about A Course in Miracles. It's been in the months, I think it's probably been more than a year since I made a video, but I was sort of feeling like I was inspired to do something today. I want to talk about freedom. If we're free, God has created us to be free. God has given us total freedom. It's such a freedom that there's no strings attached. There's no limits to how much freedom. It's not like God's sitting there saying, oh, you can only be a certain amount free, and then if you go beyond the limits of how much freedom you're allowed, then now you've entered into some kind of breaking of the law. Now you're guilty and you're sinful. And God wouldn't be like that. God's given us unconditional freedom, unconditional lack of limits. We are unlimited. We're not. God doesn't say, "Oh, you can do this much, but then it has to stop somewhere." So you're completely free, and that means that you're also free to deny your freedom, and it means you're free to dream of not being free, and you're free to even have nightmares. You're free to try to be murderous. You're free to do absolutely whatever you like. And the interesting thing there is that there's no guilt, because if you're free, if God has said to you, you're completely free to be whatever you want, do whatever you want, choose whatever you want, then there's no sort of strings attached. There's no point where you're sort of saying, except that if you do these few things, then you're a sinner, or if you fall out of line, or you get a little bit too radical, or you've overstepped the mark, then somehow you're going to be breaking His law. So the fact that you were created to be free, which means that He's already given you total permission and freedom to be fully free forever, with no clauses or small print or reasons why He might revoke it later. So you've already been granted that freedom, so therefore there can't be any cases where you can do something wrong, you can do something that breaks the law, you can do something that's a sin, you can become guilty. So if you really are totally free, then you can't possibly have any grounds for guilt, because there's never going to be a way that you can say, I shouldn't be doing this, or I've done something wrong, I'm not supposed to be this way, or any way that you could violate God's will or somehow offend the freedom that He's given you. It's just not possible. So if you're free, there's never a situation where you can possibly become guilty. Because God will say, no, you're free to do that. You're free to be this way. You're free to make this choice. You're free to create your kingdom wherever you like. You're free to even be in denial. You're free to reject who you are. You're free in every way, without guilt, without any kind of judgment, without any kind of accusation or condemning, or you broke the law, or you're a criminal, or any kind of accusing, any reprimand, any wrath of God. There's nothing. It's just you're totally free. So if you own up to being completely free, then you're also owning up to being completely guiltless. There can't be a reason why you're guilty if you're free. So is kind of the key to your freedom. Is forgiveness is based on basically acknowledging the freedom that everybody has. And you're free to experience whatever you want. You're free to choose your feelings. You're free to decide what you'll experience. There is no limits. So it becomes interesting then, because you start noticing, if you start claiming your freedom and not making yourself guilty for whatever you're being or however you're doing or whatever choices or whatever, and you recognize, and you're allowed to do whatever you want with no limits, no terms and conditions. And you start to give that freedom to other people, and you say, that's okay, go ahead. Go right ahead and kill yourself if you want. Go right ahead and be murderous, be an attacker, be a guilt producer, be a victim, be an abuser, whatever you want, you're free. If you want to go do that, go do it. And don't get me wrong here, because I'm not condoning anything. I'll come to that in a minute. But we have to at least acknowledge that people are free to do whatever they want. Even Hitler is free to be an evil, nasty person. And people that are attackers are free to be attackers. And people that are trying to hurt other people are free to do so. And you notice God isn't coming in and saying, oh, I'm sorry, you fucked up and now you're guilty, sorry, you're going to be in prison now. God's not come swooping in and saying, stop that, don't fucking do that, you're wrong and you're a bad person. Even in the most extreme cases. So, regardless of whether society likes the idea or not, everyone must be given the freedom to be whatever the fuck they want to be. And that means allowing everyone to be free. If you don't allow everybody to be free, what you're saying is you're not allowed to exist. You're not allowed to be yourself. You're not allowed to have your choices. And now that's judgmentalism, and now you're being not forgiving. So if you want to be doing forgiveness, you have to be giving freedom to everybody. You have to be saying, what you're doing is not a sin. What you're doing is not guilty. What you're doing is okay. It's allowed. You're free to do whatever you want. You're free to attack. You're free to abuse. You're free to wage a war. You're free to be murderous and evil. If you want to really do that, that's your choice, it's your freedom. And as soon as we start to judge the thing and start saying, you're not supposed to do that, you're not allowed to do that, that's wrong, that's bad, that's evil, and we start having all these conditions of you're somehow you're violating the law, you're going outside the rules, and you're starting to say, you're guilty for that. That's not forgiveness. So society is very much filled with opinions and beliefs about what is okay and what is not okay. And technically in the big picture, everything is okay. And again, this doesn't justify anybody doing anything stupid, so I'll get to that in a minute. But you are at least free to. So, since everybody is free, nobody is guilty of anything, and that's the forgiving attitude. Because you can't be saying that people should be limited, people should be imprisoned, people should be not allowed, people should be confined and controlled, and there's certain things that are acceptable and certain things that are not acceptable, because that means you're now becoming a prison guard, and you're putting people in prisons, and you're controlling, and you're saying you're not allowed, you're denied, I resist you, and you shouldn't be the way you are, and this is not okay, you're not acceptable. It's not forgiving. Jelly babies. So if we would let everybody be free to be whatever they want and do whatever they want, we would have no resistance, no guilt. We would be in a state of unconditional love. We would be feeling happy. We would be feeling liberated and freed. There would be no attachments. Everything would be let go of. Everything would be allowed. And no strings attached. Now we're into unconditional love and limitlessness. And we need to be embracing the fact that we are limitless beings. We are unlimited. And we can't be unlimited if we're constantly placing limits on everyone and everything and saying, that's too much, and this is over the edge, and that's outside the box, and this is unacceptable, and it's how much it is, or whatever. We have to be free, and that's the most vital thing. If you can't be free, you can't be yourself. If you're not free, you're making yourself guilty. And then you start putting other people in prisons because you feel that you're in a prison. And most of the world is full of prisoners who see themselves as not allowed, not acceptable, shouldn't exist, shouldn't be free. And things that you do something, oh, I feel guilty about it. Well, now you've put yourself in a prison. And all that guilt mounts up, and then you project it onto other people and put them in prisons. Oh, you're not allowed this, and I hate you because you're that way, and this is disgusting, and these are offensive, and I don't like that when you do that. It's not forgiving. It's judgmental, and it's controlling, and it's tyrannical, and it's dictatorial, and it's evil. And it's also murderous. You're trying to say to someone, you're not supposed to exist the way you are. I'm going to get rid of you. Let's just kill you off. And that would be proper. So, fundamentally, God does not coerce. God does not control. God doesn't revoke freedom. God doesn't say, you're not allowed to have your free will. You're not allowed to use it how you like. Now, it doesn't mean God wills that you will imprisonment. God wills that you be free. It doesn't mean that God condones you being murderous. God knows that if you're trying to be murderous, you are imprisoning yourself and denying your freedom and your happiness, and He wants you to be happy. So it's not like we can use it to justify doing all kinds of cruel and nasty things to people, committing crimes and stuff and being a murderer. It's because if you embrace the freedom, it lifts away all the guilt. And if you don't have the guilt, you don't have any grounds for judgmentalism. You don't have any grounds for attack. You don't have any grounds for projecting it on people. If everybody's given freedom, everybody is allowed to be the way they are. So then you don't have a problem with them, and you don't have issues, and you're not having these massive murder fests where you want to go and destroy people just because they're different. So if you truly get into the freedom, you also get into unconditional love. You get into, I'm not going to put any conditions on you. I'm not going to limit you in any way. Be free. And you let them be free, and you let them go, and you allow them to have their freedom, and you stop putting them in a prison, which means you set yourself free from prison, and then you don't feel like you have a need to go attack people and hurt people and try to stop them having their freedom. And So then you don't become abusive, and you don't become the dictator, and you don't become the warmonger and the hater, and you adopt what they call golden rule behavior, where you treat people kindly and with love and freedom and charity and so on, and make people happy. So giving freedom would seem to imply everybody can go kill everybody, but it doesn't mean that, because that's really mass murder disguised as freedom, which is the ego's version of freedom. You're free to go and be a tyrannical ruler. You're free to destroy as much as you like. That's the ego's idea of freedom, and it's not really freedom. It's really you're free to go and try to imprison people as much as possible. You're free to go and hate as much as you want, but it's going to put you in a prison. It's going to put you into hatred. So what seems to be that kind of freedom where it sort of says, oh, you're free to be a really bad person if you want, is not really freedom. Because if you're really embracing the freedom and you're giving the freedom, there's no guilt. There's no sense of sin, there's no accusation, there's no resisting, there's no not allowing, there's no attachments, there's no special relationship, there's no control or manipulation, there's no judgment, there's no hate. And so you're in a state of peace and love if you're free. And if you're giving the freedom, you're giving peace and love. And that means you can only treat people well, and you can only be loving and kind and stuff. So it doesn't justify murder. It doesn't justify being mean to people and stuff. It just means you need to separate out the freedom from the what shall I do next. Give everybody the total freedom first, and then decide, is there something I should do here? Is there something I should change? Should I now prevent these people from hurting themselves? Should I be against this war? Or whatever the inspiration or the guidance is. But it's not used as a justification. And if you don't give the total freedom first, you're keeping everybody in a prison state and not allowing yourself to exist. You've got to let yourself be free. And that freedom makes you happy. If you can't be free, you're going to be miserable. If you try to stop other people having their freedom to be whatever way they are, even if it's a bad choice, even if they're mistaken, even if they're not making wise decisions, even if they're hurting themselves, even if they're hurting other people, you still have to psychologically allow them to have the freedom to do that. No matter what it is, no matter how extreme. Otherwise, you're mentally saying you're guilty, and therefore making yourself guilty, and that's not helpful. So you've got to give the freedom first, and then if some actions need to be taken, maybe you'll take some actions, or you'll seek Holy Spirit's guidance or whatever. But if you start out by saying that's wrong, shouldn't be doing that, hate you for that, you're not allowed to be different, blah blah blah, then you don't have the right foundation, and everything that comes after that is now, I'm compelled to do something because I think you're guilty. I'm compelled to take an action based on you're a bad person, so I'm going to fix you, and all this other stuff. It gets all tangled up because you're not clear about how much freedom is allowed for the person. You've got to let them have total freedom first, and then within that scope, so say, okay, you're free to kill yourself if you want. Go ahead and die. I don't care. But because it doesn't mean anything, because we're not bodies. but then go on to sort of say, well, is it working for you? Is this a good choice? Is it serving your soul? Is this part of the plan of atonement? Is this what Holy Spirit's guiding you to? Is it making you happy? Is it really working? Is it what you want? and maybe you can offer some alternative and some kind of inspired message or something. But you have to mow your grass now. See, so now I've made them not free. They're not free to mow the grass. So now I've made them guilty, which makes me guilty, and now I'm under attack by myself. So that's a bit stupid, see? So everybody needs to have total freedom, and if you could be in total freedom, you would not have any guilt whatsoever. And you'd be happy and loving and kind and accepting yourself as God created you. And it's game over for the ego, because the ego wants prisoners. You can either be hostage to the ego, or you can be host to God. So if you'd rather be host to God and enjoy total freedom forever, then all of the imprisoning has to stop. I think that's about all I want to say right now. I want to keep these a bit shorter because people don't listen anyway. So nice to see you, and take care, love and light, and be free.